They say fate works in quiet ways, but that night, fate wasn't just whispering, it was screaming through a blizzard. Imagine this, an abandoned train station, deep in the heart of winter. The kind of cold that feels like it's seeping right into your bones. The clock ticks past 2 in the morning, 2:14 a.m., to be exact. Outside, a furious snowstorm is burying the world in a blanket of white, turning every road into an impassable trap. Inside this forgotten station, a lone figure, a woman, is losing her battle against the cold. She's a nurse, someone who spends her days saving others, now finding her own life slipping away on a frozen bench. Just when it seems like her story is about to end, the heavy station doors creak open, fighting against the wind. A silhouette appears, framed by the swirling snow. It's a man, a millionaire cowboy named Jed, though you wouldn't know it just by looking at him. He's not here by chance. His truck, a machine built for tough terrain, was finally defeated by the storm just down the road. This station was his only hope for shelter. He steps inside, shaking the snow from his hat, and that's when he sees her. Curled up, shivering, barely conscious, he rushes to her side. Her name is Clara. He doesn't know she's a nurse who just finished a grueling double shift, or that her car broke down miles away, forcing her to seek refuge here. All he sees is a person in desperate need of help. He lifts her, his strength surprising even himself, and carries her toward the old station master's office, the only room with a fireplace that might still work. This single act of kindness, this chance encounter in the middle of a once-in-a-generation storm, wasn't just a rescue. It was the beginning of everything. The moment a millionaire cowboy and a selfless nurse found each other and started a love story so powerful, it would rewrite both their destinies forever. As Jed works to coax a flame to life in the dusty old fireplace, Clara starts to stir. The warmth is a lifeline, pulling her back from the edge. Her eyes flutter open, and the first thing she sees is this stranger, his face illuminated by the flickering firelight. He's rugged, with kind eyes that hold a deep-seated loneliness she recognizes instantly. For a moment, there's just the sound of the crackling fire and the howling wind outside. No words are needed. They are two souls, isolated by the storm, who have found an unexpected sanctuary not just in the station, but in each other's presence. He offers her his coat, a gesture so simple yet so profound. In that shared warmth, a connection is forged, stronger than any storm. As the hours tick by, trapped together, they start to talk. Their stories spill out, filling the empty space between them. Jed talks about his sprawling ranch, the wealth that brought him solitude instead of happiness, and the weight of a family legacy he never truly wanted. He speaks of a quiet ache, a longing for something real in a world that often feels superficial. Clara shares her own story, the passion for her work, the constant pressure of life or death situations, and the feeling of being married to her job, with little time left for herself. She reveals a vulnerability hidden beneath her capable exterior, a desire to be cared for after spending so much of her life caring for others. They discover that despite their vastly different worlds, they share the same core values: loyalty, kindness, and a deep-seated desire for a genuine human connection. The blizzard that trapped them becomes their own private world, a bubble where status and circumstance melt away. All that matters is the man and the woman, seeing each other for who they truly are. As dawn breaks, the storm begins to subside, but neither of them wants it to end. The outside world, with all its complications and expectations, is about to rush back in. But something has fundamentally changed. The station is no longer abandoned. It's the birthplace of a love that feels like destiny. When the snowplows finally clear a path, Jed drives Clara home. The silence in the truck is different now. It's not awkward. It's filled with unspoken promises. He asks for her number, a simple question that holds the weight of their entire future. She gives it to him without a second thought. That week he calls. Their first official date isn't at some fancy restaurant designed to impress. Instead, he takes her to his ranch. He shows her the horses he loves, the vast open fields that are his true home. Under the wide open sky, away from the chaos of the city and the pressures of their lives, their connection deepens. She sees the real Jed, not the millionaire, but the man who finds peace in the quiet strength of his land. He sees the real Clara, not just a nurse, but a woman with a fiery spirit and a heart big enough to heal his own loneliness. Their courtship is a whirlwind of stolen moments and quiet discoveries. Picnics by the river, late-night talks under the stars, and the simple joy of sharing a meal after a long day. It's a love story built on authenticity, far from the prying eyes of the world, but a love this bright can't stay hidden forever. The news eventually breaks. The reclusive millionaire cowboy is dating an unknown nurse. The media descends, painting Clara as a gold digger and Jed as a fool. Their private world is shattered by tabloids and gossip. Friends and even family cast their doubts. Yet's high society circle looks down on Clara, questioning her intentions. Clara's colleagues whisper behind her back, wondering how she managed to catch such a wealthy man. The pressure is immense, a different kind of storm that threatens to tear them apart. There are moments of doubt. Clara wonders if she can handle the scrutiny, if she truly fits into his world. Jed faces pressure from his family to end the relationship, to choose someone more suitable. It's a test of their bond. One evening, after a particularly harsh article is published, Clara almost walks away, believing she's protecting him from the chaos she's brought into his life, but Jed refuses to let her go. He stands before her and makes a choice. He chooses her over his family's expectations, over public opinion, over his own fears. He tells her that his life was empty before she stumbled into it, that her love is the only fortune he truly values. In that moment, they decide to fight for their love, together. They stop hiding. They walk into charity galas hand in hand, their quiet confidence a silent rebuttal to the whispers. Jed uses his platform not to boast, but to highlight Clara's incredible work as a nurse, celebrating her compassion and dedication. Clara, in turn, shows his world that her worth isn't measured by her bank account, but by the strength of her character. They prove that their love isn't about money or status. It's just about two people who found each other in the dark and chose to walk into the light together. Their story becomes an inspiration, a testament to the idea that true love can weather any storm, whether it's a blizzard or a media frenzy. 1 year to the day after they met, Jed takes Clara back to the abandoned train station. The snow is gone, replaced by a field of wildflowers. He gets down on one knee, not with a flashy speech, but with the simple, heartfelt words of a man who knows he's found his soulmate. He tells her that the station wasn't an ending, but their beginning. And he asks her to be his partner in every beginning to come. She says yes, tears of joy streaming down her face. Their wedding isn't a massive society event. It's an intimate ceremony at the ranch, surrounded by the few people who supported them from the start. They say their vows as the sun sets over the fields, promising to be each other's shelter, each other's home, forever. Their love story doesn't just change their lives. It changes the world around them. Together, they create a foundation that supports rural healthcare, bringing vital services to underserved communities. Clara's passion and Yet's resources become a powerful force for good. Their story is no longer tabloid fodder, it's a legend. The story of the millionaire cowboy and the nurse who met in a snowstorm becomes a modern fairy tale, reminding everyone that the greatest fortunes are not found in wealth, but in a love that is strong enough to rewrite destiny. And it all started on a cold winter's night at 2:14 a.m. when fate didn't just knock, it broke down the door. Thank you for watching. If their story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more unforgettable tales of love and destiny. We'll see you in the next one. The blizzard came out of nowhere. One of those vicious winter storms that swallows whole towns without warning, a silent predator moving under the cover of a steel-gray sky. Ramang Hartley, the quiet millionaire cowboy known for his sprawling ranch and an even bigger heart, hated traveling in weather like this. He preferred the open range, the feel of his horse beneath him, and the predictable rhythm of ranch life. But tonight wasn't optional. He had just left a charity fundraiser in Dallas, feeling exhausted and craving the profound silence of his home. The air at the event had been thick with perfume and forced pleasantries, and all he wanted was to be back in his own world. Flying home was out of the question. The storm had grounded every plane. So Romang did something he hadn't done in years. He took the last night train heading toward his small town of Redemption. The station was nearly empty, a ghost of its usual self. The wind howled through broken window frames, a mournful sound that seemed to carry a warning. Romang pulled his worn cowboy hat lower, his boots echoing on the icy floor with a lonely rhythmic clap. The place felt abandoned, lit by just 2 flickering overhead lights and an old vending machine humming a low, desperate tune, as if it were breathing its last seconds. The air was heavy, charged with a sense of foreboding. Everything felt wrong. Then he heard it. A soft, strangled sound, almost like a weak, desperate breath. It was barely audible over the screaming wind, but it cut through the noise like a shard of glass. Romang froze. He was a man not easily shaken, having faced down charging bulls and unpredictable market crashes. But something in that sound pierced straight through him, touching a nerve he didn't know he had. He followed the sound, his boots crunching softly on the frost that had crept inside. At the far end of the platform, slumped against a cold metal pole on a hard wooden bench, he found her. A young woman dressed in thin hospital scrubs. Her hair was drenched, clinging to her face in dark strands. Her fingers were blue, a stark contrast to her skin, which was as pale as the snow piling up outside. Her eyes fluttered, struggling to open, but she couldn't seem to manage it. She wasn't asleep. She was freezing to death. A tight knot formed in Romang's chest. He knelt beside her, his voice a low, gentle murmur. "Hey, sweetheart," he said, his calloused hand gently tapping her cheek, trying to rouse her. "Stay with me." Her lips barely moved, her whisper lost in a puff of white air. "I missed the last train." And then she collapsed deeper into the bench, her body going limp. Romang didn't think twice. His rancher's instincts, the ones that told him how to care for a newborn calf in a winter storm, took over completely. He shrugged off his heavy, shearling-lined coat, wrapping it around her trembling body, cocooning her in its warmth. Then he scooped her into his arms as if she weighed nothing at all. The cold had sunk deep into her bones. He could feel her shaking uncontrollably through the layers of fabric. The storm howled louder, its fury intensifying as if it was fighting him for her life. As Romang carried her through the swirling snow toward his truck, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time twisted in his gut fear. It wasn't fear of the storm. He'd weathered plenty of those. It was a raw, primal fear of losing this stranger, this woman he had only just found, yet somehow felt an inexplicable connection to. Inside the truck, the warmth from the heater blasted through the cabin, a welcome reprieve from the biting cold. The woman's head rested against his shoulder, her breathing fragile and uneven. Romang kept his arm around her, speaking softly, his deep voice a steady anchor in the chaos, trying to keep her from slipping away. "What's your name, darling?" Her lips trembled as she formed the word. "Claire." He held her a little closer, the name settling into his heart like it belonged there. "Well, Claire, you're safe now. I promise." And Romang Hartley was a man who never, ever broke a promise. But as he drove his truck through the white curtain of snow, navigating the treacherous roads by instinct more than sight, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a simple act of kindness. This wasn't just him helping a stranded stranger. There was something about Claire, something about the way she felt in his arms, that felt like a missing piece of a puzzle he didn't even know he was solving. Fate, it seemed, wasn't done with them, not by a long shot. Because saving her life tonight was only the beginning. The real storm, the emotional one, the one that would challenge everything they thought they knew about themselves and each other, was still out there, waiting just over the horizon. And it was coming for them both. The next morning, Claire woke up wrapped in a heavy quilt, the scent of cedarwood and fresh hay surrounding her. Her head throbbed, her body ached, but warmth soft, steady warmth finally seeped back into her bones. She blinked at the rustic wooden ceiling. Where am I? A moment later, the door opened, and Romang stepped inside carrying a tray of soup. His cowboy hat hung low, but when he saw her awake, relief washed across his face. "You're up," he said softly. "Thank God." Claire tried to sit, but dizziness pushed her back. "You saved me," she whispered. Romang shook his head. "The storm nearly took you." "I just got there in time." He smiled gently, but behind his eyes lived a shadow, something old, something he didn't speak of. Claire ate slowly, her hands still trembling. "Why were you at the station so late?" Romang cleared his throat, shifting awkwardly. "Long day, needed some air. Guess fate put me there for a reason." She held his gaze a moment longer than intended. Something about him felt grounding. Safe. A man who lived simply yet carried a complicated history in his eyes. Weeks passed, and so did denial. The storm that had trapped Claire at Romang's ranch had also, in a way, trapped her in a reality she wasn't ready to face. The roads were still blocked, but she insisted she could leave. She was a nurse, after all. She knew how to take care of herself. But Romang, with a polite yet stubborn resolve, simply refused. "You're a nurse," he'd say, his voice calm but firm. You know your body isn't ready. She'd roll her eyes, putting on a show of frustration, but secretly, she didn't mind staying. Each day felt like unwrapping a new layer of the man who had saved her. She discovered the quiet rhythm of his life. He woke before the sun, the first rays of dawn catching him as he fed the horses. She saw the gentle way he handled injured animals, his large hands surprisingly tender, his voice a soft whisper that seemed to soothe their pain. And she noticed how he laughed, a deep, genuine sound that only ever escaped when he thought no one was listening. Her eyes were often drawn to the scar that ran across his knuckles, a pale, faded line against his tanned skin. Bar fight? She joked one afternoon, trying to lighten the serious air that often surrounded him. He glanced at his hand and offered a rare, small smirk. Life fight, was all he said. She sensed a deep well of pain inside him, a history he kept locked away, and he never shared more. But Claire was carrying her own shadows. Before the storm, her life had been a frantic blur of double shifts at the hospital, a world of barely sleeping, barely eating, barely living. It felt less like a life and more like a constant state of survival. Here with Romain, everything slowed down. The frantic pace of her own mind began to quiet. They fell into a comfortable, unspoken rhythm. She would spend her afternoons reading by the fireplace, the crackling flames casting a warm glow on the pages. He would be nearby, mending old, worn saddles, the scent of leather and wood polish filling the air. In their shared space, silence spoke louder than words. But feelings were a different, more dangerous territory. One they were both cautiously avoiding. One evening, Claire stood on the porch, watching the sunset bleed fiery oranges and purples across the vast sky. The beauty of it was so overwhelming, so peaceful, it almost hurt. Romain joined her, his presence a familiar comfort. He stood beside her, hands tucked into his pockets, just watching the colors fade with her. You're healing, he said gently, his voice barely disturbing the quiet. Claire nodded, a lump forming in her throat. Thanks to you. A beat of silence passed between them, charged with everything unsaid. Then Romain hesitated, his gaze still fixed on the horizon. Claire, I don't like to interfere in people's business. But that night, the night of the storm, why were you at the train station? Her breath hitched. It was the one question she had been dreading, the one she hoped he'd never ask. She let out a shaky sigh, the truth finally bubbling to the surface. I was leaving, she admitted, her voice small. My life, it felt like it was falling apart, a patient I tried so hard to save. Her voice cracked, the memory still raw. He didn't make it. The family blamed me, and I blamed me. I just thought if I could get away, even for one night, I'd finally be able to breathe again. Romain shifted closer, the last rays of sunlight catching the strong line of his jaw. He didn't offer empty platitudes. Instead, he said, with a certainty that anchored her, you did your best. Sometimes that's all we can do. The world doesn't always see that, but I do. Tears she hadn't wanted to shed, not in front of him, began to well in her eyes and spill down her cheeks. He didn't pull her into a hug or try to stop her from crying. He just stood there, a silent, steady presence, letting her finally release the grief she'd been holding onto for so long. He let her feel safe. And in that moment, under the blanket of twilight, Claire realized it wasn't just her body that was healing. Her heart was healing, too. But every good story gets tested. Just as the bond between them began to feel solid, undeniable, life decided to throw its own storm their way. One morning, a crisp white envelope arrived. Romain opened it, and Claire watched as his jaw clenched, his eyes hardening into chips of ice. He tried to hide the papers, but she caught a glimpse. You're being sued? She asked quietly, the words hanging in the tense air. Romain let out a sharp, frustrated breath. An old business partner. He claims I cheated him when we bought out the North Ranch. It's a lie, a complete fabrication, but he's got powerful lawyers and money to burn. Claire stepped forward, her protective instincts kicking in. Romain, let me help. I can read through the documents. Maybe I'll see something. No. The word was sharp, cutting through her offer. It was softer than anger, but harsher than fear. I won't drag you into my mess. A surge of defiance rose in her. You already dragged me into your life, she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Let me stay. Romain looked at her, his expression torn. She could see the war raging inside him, the desire to keep her close versus the desperate need to protect her from the shadows that had followed him for years. "I don't want you to get hurt," he finally admitted, his voice rough with emotion. "I've lost too many people already." Claire reached out and gently took his hand, her fingers tracing the faded scar. "And I don't want to lose you." It was the first time either of them had said it. The first time they had given a name to the powerful current flowing between them, a truth their hearts had known for weeks. The lawsuit became public within days. It was a media frenzy. Reporters swarmed the ranch gates like vultures. Millionaire Cowboy sued for fraud. The headlines were sensational, relentless. Claire watched Romain come home each day, exhausted and worn down, fighting to defend a truth that nobody seemed interested in hearing. The weight of it was crushing him. One night, when the pressure seemed almost unbearable, he stood alone on the porch, staring out into the pitch-black darkness as if looking for answers. Claire slipped out to join him. "Claire," he said, his voice quiet and heavy. "If you stay with me through this, people will question you. They'll judge you. They might even hate you just for being associated with me." She didn't hesitate. She walked right up to him and placed her hand flat on his chest, feeling the steady, sure beat of his heart beneath her palm. It was the one constant in all this chaos. "Romain," she whispered, her voice full of a strength she didn't know she had. "I survived storms far colder than the night you found me, and I'm not leaving." He looked at her, then truly looked at her, and she saw something break free in his eyes. A wall he had kept up for years finally crumbled. He closed the small space between them and kissed her. It wasn't a soft, timid kiss. It was a kiss filled with all the unspoken words, all the pent-up longing, the passion of a man who had been silent for far too long. That kiss, happening in the middle of a public scandal, surrounded by fear and uncertainty, wasn't an ending. It was a true beginning. It was the moment their love story officially began. A story that would be remembered, not because a millionaire cowboy saved a freezing nurse from a storm, but because in the middle of their own personal hurricanes, they ended up saving each other. Thanks for watching. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what happens next.